Good evening. As farmers struggle to recover after the extreme wet weather and flooding, the largest insurer of farms and rural properties has revealed it's dealing with an estimated £2 million worth of claims across the West Midlands. NFU Mutual, which is based in Stratford-upon-Avon, is currently handling 431 cases in the region and says it could have to pay out more than £90 million across the UK. That's almost as much as after the floods of 2007. But what about the impact on individual farms affected by the bad weather? Well, our rural affairs correspondent David Gregory-Kumar is at a farm in Shropshire for us now. So how have they been coping, David?
Well, Nick, all our farmers are coping to an extent, and they're having very different experiences with this weather, of course. But what does unite them is they're all having to deal with what is increasingly weird weather. There's still plenty of water about on this farm at Blakemere in Herefordshire, but nowhere near the levels they have seen recently.
And at its height, about 16-foot flood would have been up to about our head level now. And as you can see from the floor, it killed the crop out completely.
About 30 acres of land is out of action here because of flooding and wet weather. In terms of crops, that means they're £15,000 down on any potential harvest this year. So they won't be growing anything on these fields for the next 12 months. But you know, even if your farm wasn't directly affected by flooding and floodwater, well, all that wet weather is still having an impact on how you farm.
We didn't have a very good year last year, and 2007 was very wet, and we're still playing catch up from this series of rather strange weather patterns, and they've gone from sort of very wet to very dry, very cold, very wet, and nothing has sort of, you know, we're used to our temperate climate and we haven't sort of seen it.
On this sheep farm near Worcester, things are getting back to normal. The sheep are inside because their usual grazing was swallowed up by the floodwaters around the city. And while this lamb proved a little tricky, despite the rising waters and being kept inside far longer than usual, lambing has been a success. Not that farmer Steve Page wasn't worried.
It's a few sleepless nights before we started, but it's gone really well. We've had over 500 lamb in 10 days, and yeah, it's gone very well. A lot better than I thought anyway. What
farmers want now is a typical spring, some April showers and a little bit of warmth. So we're now on another farm near Albrighton where lambing is underway, and although this farm hasn't been affected by floodwaters, like most of our farms, they have been dealing with that wet weather. So we're talking about that a bit later in the programme, and also about new regulations from Europe about what kind of identification tags you have to put on your sheep. And farmers are worried about that because if they get it wrong, well, they could be in for a hefty fine and financial penalty. But we'll be talking about that later, with more lambs, of course. But for now, back to you in the studio, Nick.
They are irresistible too, aren't they? David, thank you. Right, let's head back to our rural affairs correspondent, David Gregory-Kumar, in Shropshire now, who's been finding out how our farmers are coping with what's already been a difficult year. Sheep farmers, of course, are in the middle of lambing at the moment, but while prices are high, new European rules mean extra paperwork and costs. A meeting was held in Bridgnorth last night to discuss the regulations, which mean every animal has to be fitted with an electronic ear tag by the end of next month.
We've just got to go with it, I suppose, haven't we? Yeah, haven't got much choice.
There's quite a lot of paperwork, and this is why it's also a good thing that it's coming out, because it can, if they want to, cut out all the paperwork.
The reassuring thing is that the actual sheep movements won't be held up. If there are hiccups in the paperwork, they get sorted out afterwards, so that farmers can have confidence that their sheep will still move through the auction markets, and consumers can still have confidence that the lamb will still end up on their plate.
Some concern there, David, about the new regulations. Why have they been introduced?
Well, it's all to do with Europe, and John Parry is the sheep farmer here on this farm. John, you were at the meeting last night. What's the worry for sheep farmers with these regulations? They could be fined if they get it wrong?
Yes, that's quite right. If you don't keep within the regulations, you could be inspected, and if you get inspected and you get things wrong, there's a possibility that they could reduce your subsidy claim by up to 3% through a breach of cross-compliance.
Now, it is electronic, but you're going to be sticking with paperwork for now, aren't you?
Yes, there's a paperwork system still in place, but we are gradually moving into an electronic system, and quite rightly too. We should use technology very, very effectively if we possibly can.
OK, thank you very much for that. Now, we've been talking about bad weather. Let's talk about some good weather. This is the stuff you're feeding your animals, and this is last year's hay.
Yes, we made some excellent hay in July time. It was lovely July, if people remember, and that's made a big difference to the winter feeding. The sheep have been very happy on it and very contented.
So when you get good hay in July, you feed it to the sheep, and that means when they become pregnant, they're really good, fit, and they're ready to have good lambs.
Yes, that makes a big difference to them if they get the right nutrition. In the year before, the hay was very poor because of the wet 2012 summer. So it was a nice relief to get some really good stuff in the barn. And
we should be honest, it's been a good lambing, and also lamb prices aren't too bad for you.
No, lamb prices have improved a fair bit. They're up to about the 2012 prices now. There's less New Zealand lamb in the country, and there seems to be enough demand for our lamb at the moment.
Thank you very much for that, John. So that's good news, of course, for your Easter dinner. That's it from our lambing farm, but we will have more from the lamb cam just before the end of the programme. Stay tuned for that. But for now, what they'd really like here is a little bit of nice weather so they can turn these lambs out into the fields.
OK, we'll be back at 10 o'clock with more from the lambing sheds. We leave you down on the farm in Shropshire. Bye for now.